Hi folks, Barry here from Make It So Adult Fitness in Long Beach, talking today about safety tips when working with resistance bands. Working safely with resistance bands is a very effective and helpful way to maintain and improve your strength, your coordination, your function, your range of motion, your agility. But there's just a few precautions that you have to observe. Every kind of exercise has certain risks. They're easy to understand, and as long as you understand what they are and what the remedy is to them, you'll have an accident-free experience. Let's start first with the bands themselves. So bands like the bands that we work with come in two varieties. We have flat bands. The ones that I use are 6 feet tall and about 5 inches wide, and they come in different colors, each color representing a different amount of resistance. There's continuous loop bands. The ones that I use are 41 inches long. They're all 500 millimeters thick, so the difference between the bands would be in the width. The wider the band, the more resistance. Again, everything else other than the width is the same. So when you increase the width, in effect, you make it a bigger band. The bigger band has more resistance. These come in different colors. Each color represents a different level of resistance. And there are the tube bands that usually come with handles attached. The ones I prefer are from Body Elastics. The reason I like these is, first, they've been tested on a dynamometer for the amount of resistance when they're stretched to their maximum length, which is about double what their unstretched length is, and you'll see what the resistance is that they're rated for. So this red band, for example, has the equivalent of 8 pounds of resistance when it's stretched all the way out. The ones that you're familiar with would look like this, with handles, the Body Elastics. You attach the handle, and the advantage to that is with one handle, you can attach multiple bands. So there's an 8-pound band. That's a 23-pound band. Again, pounds meaning the amount of resistance when it's fully stretched out. So if I attach the 8 to the 23, I now have 31 pounds of resistance. Of course, you attach the same kind of handle to the opposite end. If you have loop bands at home, or if you're familiar with loop bands, normally it's a single band with its amount of resistance, which isn't adjustable. Everything else, though, is the same. So let me take the black band off. And talk about the safety of the bands themselves. The one disadvantage that elastic resistance has is they are subject to wear and tear or being degraded the way that, let's say, dumbbells or barbells or a machine isn't. Of course, machines require maintenance and upkeep, which can be expensive. Barbells and dumbbells, you're not going to break them. You're not going to bend it, you're not going to pull it apart, so that's certainly their advantage. But that advantage stops there. With variable resistance, which is what elastic bands are, whether they're flat bands, continuous loop bands, or tube bands with handles, is just in the property itself of being stretchable. So here's what I always want you to look for, and I do want you to periodically examine your bands. I recommend every time before you use them. When I work with clients in the gym, I inspect my bands every single morning before I put any of them into service. With tube bands, what you're looking for, take your hand with your thumb and your finger and just kind of pull the band through while squeezing with some pressure. If there's any little tears or abrasions in the band, you'll feel it. If you feel it, then what you do is you just kind of like pull it apart and see if it's an actual split or if it's just where the band has just gotten a little bit of wear. If there's a tear in the band, take it out of service. Don't risk it. Another area to look is with the handle bands is down where the handle attaches to the band. So pull that apart and examine it. That's a common area for the band to deteriorate or degrade from use. With the continuous loop bands, again, you do the same thing. You run your thumb and your fingers across the band. If there's any nicks or anything in it, you'll feel them. Now, one thing I want to point out to you, these continuous loop bands, most of them are not as good as the ones that I use. Again, but mine have to be good because I use them all day long for both clients and for myself, so they get a lot of use. If these are your personal bands, they're obviously going to be used less. The difference between the ones that I use and the cheaper ones that are more typical, they'll look exactly the same. There's no regulation or rule in the industry about a certain color equates to a certain amount of resistance. So this is a purple band, and you'll see purple bands from a lot of different manufacturers. You'll see red bands, orange bands, green bands, blue bands. Again, different manufacturers use the same colors, but there's no conformity or consistency or requirement for there to be so from brand to brand. So I wanted to show you what happens when a band like this gets damaged. Okay. I'm going to come up close to the camera. I hope you can see that little nick there. Mm-hmm. Now, in the gym, I would take this band out of service. When you see that, this band is eventually going to break, for whatever it's worth, by the way. I've had this band, probably 6 years, using it often 4 or 5 times a day, 5 days a week. And it just now is showing that wear and tear. A lot of resistance on this band. Very few people can work with this amount of resistance. Special shout out to Howard and Jesse, by the way. They're strong guys, and this is a band that they frequently use. When I see that damage, I'm going to take this band out of service. But let me point something out. I started to talk before about the difference between the bands that I use and what are more commonly found that look just like this. These bands are made from multiple layers of latex. Cheaper bands are molded bands. Same color, they'll look the same, but that molten latex is poured into a mold and allowed to dry. The difference is they'll lose some of their resistance over time, and they're also more likely to break or to snap than these are. So as I said, these are made from multiple layers, and again, let me come up close, because the one thing that people often think is damage, and it's not, is right here. You'll feel, you can see a ridge right there. That's where this band has been molded together. Okay? That is not the flaw. Every band has that. In fact, that's how I know that this is a layered band. That's how it's been, well, think of it as being welded together. So that's not a problem, but that little nick that I showed you is. So I won't use this band with a client. If you have to take a band out of service though, don't throw it away. Here's an orange band that has no problems, good band to use. Here's an identical orange band that had a nick in it. So I took a pair of scissors and I cut it right where the nick is. But don't throw it away, just repurpose it. Now watch what I can do with this band. I can do pretty much everything with this cut band that I can do with a loop band. I can do shoulder raise, I can do hammer curls, I can do a chest press, I can do a row for the back, I can do triceps extensions, I can do squats, and I can do hip abductions. Those are most of the same exercises I would use with the same band in its loop configuration. So again, if you have to take a continuous loop band out of service by cutting it, don't throw it away, it's still usable. Next, let's talk about band attachments. There's two ways that we work with bands. And that would be the same for any of the three styles of band: continuous loop, flat bands, or handle bands. And that's either ground-based or not attached to anything. So like this is a squat. I can do every exercise in my arsenal pretty much unattached. Or we can do it attached. To attach, you need a door attachment. Yes, if you had a stationary post or a pole in the ground that was stable and isn't going to pull over, or as long as it's smooth, it won't damage the band, yes, you can wrap it around and use that as an anchor. Also, if you have a stairway railing, and again, it's stable, I would be careful using those spindles that come from the railing down to the step. Wouldn't want to pull one loose. But the railing itself, it is fine to use. But for the most part, if you're doing it band attachments or attached resistance, you're going to use a door attachment. Many sets of resistance bands of all varieties either come with a door anchor, or you can buy them cheap enough, or in a moment I'll show you how to make your own. So a door attachment, regardless what brand it is, all have the same basic idea. There's a loop to thread the band through. And then something that acts as a stopper, so if you attach it to a door, it doesn't pull through. When attaching it to a door, there's different exercises that you can do that are influenced by what's called line of pull or line of push. So line of pull would be if I'm pulling it like from down top, or pulling it straight across, or from the bottom up. That's my line of pull. Line of push is the same thing, except instead of pulling it, I'm pushing it. With a door anchor, two things to remember. One, you can attach it to the side of the door with the handle that opens and closes if you're on the side of the door that the door closes. That way the door frame itself will prevent the door from coming open. That option isn't always available at home, where the only door that makes sense to work with is in a hallway, and the hallway is too narrow if you're on the closing side to be able to do anything, so you have more room on the other side. If you have to work on the side where the door opens, where it's not being supported by the frame, do not do it on the handle side. Do it on the hinge side. It's much more stable. So with the anchor, I'll use this one as an example. Open the door and close it. It's very stable. You thread your bands through, perform your exercise. And again, perform up here, down here, all the way up, all the way down. It's the same principle. Now suppose you don't have a door anchor and you want to do attached exercises. Here's an option. We all have scarves or handkerchiefs because we're all in lockdown for coronavirus. Take a scarf, put a knot in it. I would use a double knot. Put the knot through, close the door, and there's your door anchor. It'll work just as well. But give it a few good, strong tugs. These door anchors are mostly made out of ballistic material, and they're almost impossible to break. If that bandana has a tear in it or a worn spot, I wouldn't want to see you putting all your strength while you're leaning forward and then all of a sudden have a tear. So as long as the material you're using, that bandana is a healthy piece of fabric, you shouldn't have that problem. But do keep that thought in mind. The last thing that I want to point out to you, and this should have been the first thing as well as the last thing. What you do not want to do is attach your band to something that is not stable. For instance, if you think you can tie this band around the door handle, either by wrapping it or tying it, please don't do that. You're asking for an accident. Same thing if it's one of those lever handles. You want a firm, solid, stable door anchor. Senator Harry Reid from Nevada, now retired, he was Senate Majority Leader. Senator Reid has worked out for bands for a long time. About a year or so ago, he had an accident and he's now blind in one eye. It's kind of mysterious about what he was actually doing when the accident occurred. All of us who work with bands think we know because there's only, a couple of things that could happen, and typically what would happen, you would be visiting in a hotel and you don't have a door anchor, where you're trying to improvise on the fly, and you'll just wrap it around something that's not stable, either the structure itself or that the band won't remain on it constantly, and it flew off. So again, use a door anchor, either a regular professional door anchor. By the way, if your band set didn't come with one of these and you need to buy one at a sporting goods store when they open, or on Amazon, they're very cheap. They're $8 or $10. Or make your own out of a good quality cotton scarf. Just make sure that you give it some really good tugs to make sure that it's stable and that it's not going to tear. So that's it about band safety. Just observe those simple precautions, be aware of the kind of things that can happen, and I promise you, you'll have a very satisfying experience exercising with bands. My time is up, and I thank you for yours.